What is Divest SPD all about?
Let's see. Divest SPD is a sort of ad hoc campaign targeting the Seattle Police Foundation. The Seattle Police Foundation is a nonprofit that supports the SPD materially, and it also provides sort of like a propaganda service, basically, to kind of help with the public relations of the department. But so, I mean, those are the two functions. It also, it provides basically like a lot of equipment, including, not necessarily like weapons or anything, but like riot gear, surveillance equipment, all that stuff. Then on the public relations side, it like provides, sort of like for instance, they give the police a pony, and they use that pony to take it around to like the elementary schools, and to kind of give this impression to people that the police are nice and friendly and approachable. But the big issue is that the foundation is a way for corporations to sort of pump money into the police departments, and it's totally unaccountable because it's like a private foundation. They don't have to actually like report how they're spending the money, so it adds this sort of extra layer of dark money coming into the department, and it also opens up a lot of potential for sort of quid pro quo, just like exchanging favors, just like legalized bribery. So what we're doing is to try to target and encourage people to divest from the police foundation through sort of like traditional tactics, which is what they call name and shame. You say like they did this with Nike with the sweatshop campaign. To get Nike to reform their practices, they sort of named them. They said, this is what you're doing, and posed the cost on them in terms of like it made them look bad, made people not want to shop there. And so we feel like we can use those same tactics with the donors to the Seattle Police Foundation. Specifically like a lot of them, like Starbucks, for instance. Just any company with a big brand, like especially like right now in this moment after George Floyd got killed, people are feeling like the pressure to say that Black Lives Matter, and to talk a big game about systemic racism. But at the same time, they're speaking with their pocketbooks by basically funding and building up the infrastructure of systemic racism. So that's what we want to do. We want to call them out. We want to get them to put their money where their mouth is, to divest and to reinvest in the black community.
Right, and so I'm glad I asked that question because it's easy to see the Defund SPD program that's going on right now, and to actually divest is it's totally different. I mean, right. it's around the police, but it's totally different. I had no idea about what you're discussing right now with divesting from the Seattle Police Foundation, because what really here is defund on the SPD. What kind of traction or momentum has this divest movement gained?
Well, yeah, we're really just now getting off the ground. So far, we've had there's been other demonstrations against Starbucks that are organized by the outside or separately from us. Just independently, people coming to that same conclusion. That we need to target the donors to the police foundation. So you have this group, they're called the Engage Team. You probably heard of them. They're part of the Black Collective Voices. They've put on a few demonstrations. And so, that's a real positive development so far. Like what we've been doing right now in the early stages is we're just trying to sort of coalition build. Like right now it's just me, like I'm a member of the Seattle Democratic Socialists. So right now it's me and some other members of the DSA, but we're trying to like expand out. So just in the initial phase, what we're doing is mainly we're trying to build up our social media presence, and we're doing that through creating like a lot of educational content. So that's a huge part of this mission too, is it's not just about the money, it's about sort of like following the money and sort of like, laying bare like what are the sort of forces behind the police, and so that's a big component of what we're doing. Is it's sort of like a research and a journalism project, and we're going to use that to sort of build the basis of the next phase, which is more focusing on, like I said before, like a name and shame campaign. It's going to be a lot of social media based. So like the first target we're going to do just like sort of a synergy with what's going on right now. We're going to come up with a social media campaign targeting Starbucks, because we feel like they're the ones that are like the most susceptible, I think, to pressure in this moment, because they have to maintain, like I said before, they have to maintain their image as like a progressive company. And we've seen it before, like that they've been really susceptible to social media pressure in the past. Like there was that whole deal where they called the cops on those black guys in the store, and then like after that everybody got mad, and they responded to that like really quickly by changing the bathroom policies. We've seen just recently they weren't allowing their employees to wear BLM gear, and then there was a lot of outrage over that, and they caved really quickly. So we think that they're a good target for pressure in this campaign right now.
Okay, and so my last question is that going into the protest for tomorrow, there's a big spotlight on the protest for Saturday here, and a big discussion is going on as to whether protesters, especially direct action protesters, whether these are people who are from out of town, or if these are people from Seattle who are just fed up, or people who've just always been here. And as somebody who's part of the protest community, maybe you could enlighten us.
Well, I think you got to be particularly like careful with like this narrative. I mean, a lot of people know not to actually use the words outside agitators, because it has such a like bad connotation. But I think you also have to be careful just to trying to like guess, or like, are these people new, or are they from out of town? Because you can never really tell. It's like maybe you see some people that's like you've never seen before. They don't look familiar, but I mean that's the whole thing with these sort of like tactics, is that they often wear like black bloc. They try to anonymize themselves, so you probably have seen them before. They just weren't like covered head to toe in black, so I mean it's really hard to just try to from your own perception to say that these are outsiders. Like, I mean, they did that.
Well, me personally, what I would say was they were new, not necessarily from somewhere else. They were just new and being seen. You bring up a good point. They're could be the same people I've been hanging out with.
Exactly.
That were covering the protests. They're just all black.
I mean, I change up my appearance, like, right now. Like, I don't always look like this whenever I'm going out. Sometimes I wear different clothes. It's kind of a brave new world out there. Like people do. I think people are totally justified in hiding or trying to be anonymous. Like, especially we got this like whole surveillance state going on here. So I mean, I don't know if you saw that on Twitter. Like, basically the Department of Homeland Security has these two sort of spy planes on loan. They're just like flying around, sucking up all your data and stuff. So I mean, it's really scary. I mean, you can't really blame people for trying to make themselves look a little bit less identifiable. So.
Right. And what's your position on, because we've seen all kinds of protests here in Seattle. We've seen the protests where people, you would say a peaceful protest, maybe people might sit in the street or block traffic or things like that and chant. We've also seen protests that have occurred here where there's been, considerable property damage. Well, what is your take on that?
Well, I don't personally engage in that stuff. I choose a different form of tactics, but at the same time, I'm not really going to sort of hand wring about it or be like all sanctimonious either. Because, in the grand scale of things, like, I feel like that sort of property destruction, they call it violence, and I guess if you want to define it like that, like, sure, okay, let's call it violence, like, but if we're going to take like a broad view of what is violence, then what about it's telling like what people get upset about. They get upset about a broken window, but what about other types of violence, like systemic violence, for example? It's like, right now we got about 1,500 families like adults and children, who are homeless right now. Like, to me, that's a kind of violence, right? Like, it's like you can basically just like kick somebody out of the home. If you take a child, you kick them out of the home, like suddenly just completely upend their life, like that's a kind of violence, So you have like the same people who are upset about a window getting broken or whatever, then, but they don't care about this other kind of violence that's just like happening every single day, So to me, it's kind of small potatoes in the grand scheme of things, these broken windows, or like somebody, sets a shirt on fire or something, leaves it in a pile in the street. Like, I don't know.
Right. And is there anything, here you're on the platform, lots of people are going to watch this video. What do you want people to know about your movement that maybe you haven't already covered? What do you want the public to know?
Yeah, that's good. The one thing that I didn't really cover, I kind of touched on it briefly, is, like I said, it's this, this is as much like the actual money involved in the foundation isn't a whole lot of money in the grand scheme of things, but what you can really learn just from like looking at it is like who's sort of like the real power, and who's like, like the police are just, from my perspective, the police are just a tool, basically. And it's like who's wielding that tool, right? So you got to look at who's on the police foundation board, and if you look at them, that's who the real enemy is, And when it comes down to, you take like who's on the board, like the main players is like the people who basically own Seattle. You have like the founder of the foundation is Al Kleiss. He's a commercial property developer. He owns like 3 million square feet in downtown. His family goes all the way back to the Seattle fire. You have Michael Malone, who is a big-time developer in Capitol Hill. He's the one who filed the lawsuit against CHOP. Then you have Susie Burke, who owns like, a huge chunk out of Fremont. So you got all these basically, that's who is backing the police, is the landlords, basically, the tech companies, the wealthy. And yeah, I think just, if I achieve anything, if I just achieve, educating people about that reality, I feel like I will have, accomplished something. Even if we don't get any of the other goals of the campaign, if we don't convince people to divest, obviously we hope to do that, but I think that in and of itself is a worthy goal. So, I just want to get that message out, and then I want to, do that work to educate people about the foundation and about the real power behind the police. So.